This is the smell of the leftover tuna fish sandwich you left in your lunchbox over the weekend in a wimpy trash bag.
Wimpy, wimpy, wimpy!
Blech! And this is the smell of that same sandwich in a hefty, ultra-strong trash bag.
Hefty, hefty, hefty!
Ah, smell the difference? Hefty Ultra Strong has Arm & Hammer with continuous odor control, so no matter what's inside your trash, you can stay one step ahead of stinky. And for bigger jobs, try the superior strength of Hefty Large Black Bags.
This is the smell of a warm 3-day-old egg salad sandwich in a wimpy trash bag.
Wimpy, wimpy, wimpy!
Blech!
And this is the smell of that same sandwich in a Hefty Ultra Strong trash bag with new Fabuloso lemon scent.
Hefty, hefty, hefty!
Smell the difference? When life gives you stinky, get Hefty Ultra Strong with new Fabuloso lemon scent. It smells like clean, freshly picked lemons. So no matter what's inside your trash, you can stop the stink and smell the lemon.
Hey, it's Tyler with Black Diamond Softball and Fitness. This week I wanted to change it up a little bit. Instead of talking about the physical side of the game, I wanted to talk about the mental side of the game. More importantly, I want to talk about mental health and mental health awareness. This week I bring in Jenn Starkey, an international motivational speaker, life coach, best-selling author, and truly a great friend. Jenn and I jump into different topics surrounding mental health. Most importantly, we talk about communication with our children, communication with our athletes. As coaches, we try to figure out what's the best way to teach our pupils. As parents, we try to figure out the best way to raise our kids. What gets lost in the shuffle is communication. So Jenn and I, we dive into communication and how we can solve the puzzle that is communicating with a team.
Not from a place of, hey, I know better, but from a place of, hey, here's what I'm hearing you say you want for your athlete. Here's some resources I have found. Here's some experiences I've had.
All right, so you may have seen her around the Facebook pages. This is Jenn Starkey. We kind of got together and said, hey, let's put together a 4-part series about mental health. So I'd like to introduce you to Jenn Starkey. Thank you for joining me. Recently married Jenn Starkey. How are you?
I am so amazing and great and wonderful and all the adjectives. And I'm really excited about this interview with you. This is my first interview to do since becoming an official parent. And so I'm excited about the conversation we're going to have and the information we're going to be able to share with parents and coaches out there.
Well, congratulations on becoming a mom. Congratulations on becoming a wife. I know you got a lot of stuff going on. I know you're really busy, and I want to thank you for joining me today as we jump into this mental health awareness. It seems sometimes we're afraid to talk about it until it pops up, but it doesn't pop up. It's always around. We just don't really pay much attention to it, or we don't want to pay too much attention to it because we're afraid of the subject. So I want to start off with, why do you think we're so afraid to talk about mental health and as a general subject?
It's interesting. I don't know if all people are afraid to speak about it. I think some people don't know how the tools to be able to speak about it in a way that makes them feel like they're actually making a dent or making progress. So I know that there are some parents, there are some coaches even that are scared because they don't want to cross a line. Like I've had coaches tell me, look, on the softball field, I just want to talk about softball field. I don't want to get into that eerie, feely, needy stuff with teen girls, because there's also a fear especially for male coaches, to cross a line with young ladies and young women in the female world, right? That they're scared that if they cross that line, that it could be perceived in a way that's not intended. And so a lot of times it's done out of self-protection. I also think that sometimes in general, people who are coaches, people who are leaders in the space working with athletes, they're already giving so much of themselves, right? And usually most of those people are, because they don't have systems set up in their life, they're sacrificing a part of their life that they need, whether it's with their wife or with their families or with their kids or with their career, in order to show up and serve. And so what happens is that they don't actually have the emotional capacity because they're already maxed out. So then to have deep conversations and to invest yourself in someone else's kids, sometimes when it doesn't appear like that kid or that parent even cares as much as you do, it takes a toll. So I think what happens is you see coaches and people, they get really passionate, they show up, they try to lead a charge for a period of time, and then it appears like they're not getting anywhere. So eventually they just go back to focusing on the things that they can control, the things in their own life. So I think there's two parts. One is there's a fear sometimes that it could be perceived the wrong way, or the fear that they don't have the right tools, the fear that they actually don't know how to help, or that they're not equipped to make the difference that they want to, or they just get burnt out and then they have to kind of retreat back and focus on their own health or their own goals for a little while before they can go back out and lead the charge again.
You bring up a good point, that the fear of not creating a conflict, or the fear of putting ourselves in a situation to where something could happen that we don't intend to happen. And I think we want to just kind of leave it and kind of don't concern ourselves with it, because if it's something that's going on, I don't know about it, I don't have to worry about it. I spent some time in the Marine Corps, 10 years in the Marine Corps. So I dealt with mental health personally, struggling through some of the things. A lot of my buddies did. And now that I've gotten out, a lot of the same struggles that I dealt with while I was in the Marine Corps, I still deal with it in the civilian sector as well, a lot like other people do. So as we get into this a little bit deep and a little bit further, I'm going to be asking some personal questions, because I know I'm not the only one that goes through it. And that's some stuff that I learned, talking through this, talking with the right people. We don't all have the same issues or same problems or same concerns or same stresses. We have similar. So a lot of times we do have.
For sure. Yeah. Similar experiences. Even if the situation is different, we might have the same feelings or concerns come up, for sure.
And coaches, we have an obligation to help any way we can. So when we take on that job as a coach, or take on the task as a coach, it's not just the X's and O's. At least I don't look at it that way. And there's a lot of people that look at it the same way I do, is, hey, you bring them on, you're nurturing them, you're teaching them life skills. There's a lot of different things going on. And one thing I wanted to let coaches know, that it's okay to have that conversation and have that compassion towards that athlete outside of that game, because you don't know if that's the only thing they have in their life that's happiness for them, for whatever their situation is. So be that outlet for them. So as we jump into this, I want you to lead us in how we are able to communicate with, children, adolescents, preteens, and teens, and your experiences and what you've learned that kind of help us, give us the tools to identify those communication barriers as we move forward. Starting today, I'm going to make a change today to better it down the road.
We'll do that. Absolutely. I know that too, a lot of coaches, when they listen to podcasts, they're searching, right? They're seeking, like, what is the thing that I can take away? So my intention as we go through this is to share some stories that you can use as tools or even some different models of ways to think that you can actually take and apply to, whether it's your own kids or your team that you're leading. And I know we're going to go through several parts of the series. And so really my intention is to give you tools that you can actually use to be able to open those lines of communication.
Great. That sounds good. All right. So I think where we need to start at is how to communicate with someone we don't know. And from that leadership position of, so-and-so's in charge, here's who I'm in charge of, she's on my team. How do I communicate or put my communication out in a way that's going to give her the best chance of understanding where I'm coming from and what I mean?
Okay, perfect. I love this question. I love it, because it's like the number one thing coaches want to do. They're like, how do I get my team to buy in? How do I get them to understand the vision? How do I get them to do this practice that I'm asking them to do with full intensity? And so just to make sure I'm understanding your question, you're asking from the position of a new coach or a coach with a new team, how do they then create the relationship with the player to where they understand you as a coach? Is that the question?
Exactly.
Okay. So I'm going to flip it on its head. The first thing that we need to do with young players is to know them and understand where they are coming from first. Everybody wants to know, how do I get people to follow me and my vision? But the first thing we have to do is understand where people are coming from, right? Because if you're wanting to lead them up the mountain, there's a very different way that you're going to communicate if that kid's underwater and they're drowning in the ocean versus they're already climbing up the rock wall. And so we have to know, okay, where's this person starting from? Because in the business world, or in the world of influence, whether that's somebody who's leading a team, management, if you're in sales, Marines, right? People don't buy into whatever you're selling, whether it's an actual product you're going to buy or a vision you're selling. People will not buy from you because they understand you. People will buy because they feel understood. They're going to say, oh, this person understands where I'm coming from. They understand my challenges, my difficulty. They understand my goals. And because we can start from that foundation of actually understanding our athletes, here's what they're going through. Here's what their goals are. Here's what their language and their way of understanding the world is. Now we have a common language that I can lead that person from. I think one of the big mistakes coaches make is they come in with their vocabulary, their language, their perspective of the world. Like my dad's a prime example. My dad was my coach growing up, and at least for a good chunk of time. And he would always say, Jen, you got to watch the movie Rocky. You got to watch the movie Rocky. It's the best movie in the world, right? And he would start giving me all these analogies like, yeah, dad, right? He didn't say like, hey, let me go watch the Mighty Ducks, or let me go watch whatever, film you're watching right now, and use that as an analogy. So I had it, and it was like for a long time, I just put up that wall. Like, I'm not going to watch that movie. It's an old person's movie, like growing up, when I was 8, 9, 10. So we have to first figure out what is the language that our athletes communicate on. So that way, if we say, don't drop your hands, or, like I'm going to give a bunch of bad examples right now. Don't drop your hands, squish the bug, throw a strike, like these languages that so many coaches say that aren't the best way to communicate that. It's not going to get the athlete to be able to comprehend that in a way that actually gets them the result that you're wanting them to get.
I like that. And I can guarantee you, I'm not the only one that's like, wait a minute, I've been trying to communicate wrong forever. It's like the first thing that we do is we try to teach how we want it to be learned. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So we need to figure out how the pupil communicates and learns and listens before we try to teach something. And sometimes it happens on the fly. Sometimes it takes a little bit of time, that growth and that learning. And that analogy that you used about understanding where they are, either they're already climbing up the rock wall or they're still drowning in the ocean. Like they're different. So you got to be able to communicate on both sides. And I think that is the biggest disconnect when it comes to coaching a new team or a new season or bringing it together, is you'll have girls that are separated in skill level, and the coach is only capable of coaching to one or the other.
I would say separated in skill level, but also potentially separated in like their emotional capacity to show up and give. Right. Like one athlete might, and I can attest to this in my own personal life, like the last 6 months of my life, you mentioned, like I got married, I moved, like I changed a business partnership. I had COVID 2 times. I was in the hospital with my husband for 2 months. Like all this stuff was going on in a period of time. So I'm not able to show up and you mentioned how I'm on social media everywhere. Well, I feel like for the last 6 months, I've been in hiding. Like, I'm like, because I know every time I put a video out there, I'm going to get a flood of messages. And I was scared of that flood of messages because I knew that if I put content out there, that I wasn't going to be able to show up and serve and follow up with those people because of what my capacity was in my personal life. Well, if you have a kid where their parents are going through a divorce, if you have a kid that's going through something in school, or one of their family members just got sick, or who knows their situation, they might have the skill level, but they don't have the ability to show up and focus because they're so stressed out, or they're not sleeping, or they're not getting the food that they need, the nutrition that they need to be able to show up. And so oftentimes coaches are just looking at like, why aren't they getting their glove down? Why aren't they performing like I know they're capable of? And there's usually an underlying root to that, or underlying like reason that they're not showing up in the way that you think. And it's not always surface level.
Right. It's a little bit deeper. And we have to be okay with digging in a little bit deeper and not just doing everything on the surface. I think that's a societal thing. It's just everything is just like on the surface, and we don't, if we put feeling into it, I don't think we would say the things that we say via social media behind a computer screen. We would be able to put more of ourself, more of our heart into things. And coaches, they already care. They have a passion in some capacity. I think maybe they're, like you had said earlier, they're afraid if how something could be, misinterpreted by caring too much, like being that shoulder, or just having that conversation, because you don't know how a dad or a mom is going to respond to that.
Absolutely. Well, we had that conversation before we did this interview, right? About this fear of how things are interpreted, and how I had shared with you in a call recently that, because you had mentioned, you got this new podcast, you're so excited, you're going out, you're getting attention from big time organizations, you have this platform now where you can really show up and serve. And I remember when I first started making videos, that's probably 10 years ago now. And, you get a video that it's like starts out with, 500 views, and then 1,000 views, and then 10,000 views. And I had a video that reached 100,000 views, and people are commenting, and you start to see people like, this person doesn't know what they're talking about, and all this, and you're scared. And one season I even had I was hired to coach a 10 and under team. Okay. Basically I was giving lessons to the daughter, and the dad couldn't find a team. And he's like, hey, will you coach my team? I'm like, really? I have so much going on in my personal life. I'm trying to build this business. I don't think I can commit the time it's going to take for me to do that, which is one of the reasons why you don't have a lot more female coaches, right? Because we have to make this choice usually between income and, like our personal life and coaching. And he's like, well, what if I paid you $1,500 a month at the time, which at that time in my life, I'm like, well, that's pretty cool. I get to do softball. I get to like make, it's not like a full living, but it's good enough for the weekends, right? This is like probably 10 years ago. And I went in, I started coaching, and I found that this coach, they thought because they were paying me to coach that they could just control every decision I was going to make as a coach, like where people were going to play, all this. I'm like, that's not what I signed up for. Fast forward, I find out this is true. You could look it up, but this particular parent ends up going to federal prison for scams, like business scams that they were running, like millions and millions of dollars. And this particular parent, I didn't know that this was all happening. I just knew that the communication I was getting felt very not comfortable, right? It was very like, this feels controlling, this feels manipulative, like this doesn't feel right. I found out that they had paid for our whole team to go to nationals. They didn't ever pay the hotel, like all this stuff was going on. But get this, like before I knew any of that, I didn't know any of that. They started bashing me online saying this faux psychologist, psychiatrist wants to help kids. They should really just help, like leave all the life stuff out of it. Just focus on, helping the kid throw and catch. And like, meanwhile, their kids were really going through it because their parents were going through all this stuff. Right. And at the time, like I was so frustrated with how it was making me feel that I was thinking about stepping away from the team because I was like, this isn't how it should be. But I chose to stay because I didn't feel right leaving the kids in that situation without me. Right. Like there was a time he came and grabbed me out of the dugout, like grabbed me by the collar and pulled me out and was like, and said, don't yell at my daughter. And I was like, I said, keep your hand behind your back so you don't smash your finger, right? Like there's a difference between yelling at and yelling to someone, right? And communicating. And he's like, I'm a man, you're a woman, don't talk to me. And I was like, whoa. And like, that's just one example. And I know examples like this happen. And all I can think about is like, okay, at the end of the day, this person was a dad and a mom that are trying to figure out how to provide for their kids in the best way that they know how, right? And like, and what is my responsibility to those kids? What's my responsibility as a coach to that team? And behind all of that comes back to like, you don't know when people are saying things about you online, right? When they're giving their feedback, what their life experience is, where they're coming from, the lens they're looking through. Right. So if you take that person's feedback on you as who you are, right, that's not going to serve you. Like it's a reflection of who they are. So if as long as you're showing up with good intentions, you're consistently learning, you're asking questions, you're connecting with good people, like you can't mess up, right? Like ultimately, as long as you keep showing up with a good heart, with good intentions and continuing to grow, like you'll make mistakes, but you'll keep improving along the way. And I think that at the end of the day, as long as coaches take that pressure off themselves, like, yeah, I'm going to make a mistake as a coach. Like, but at the end of the day, I'm here to love the kids and support them. Like, you start off from a much stronger foundation than trying to get everything right from the get-go.
Yeah, that brings up a couple of points that I wanted to bring up in this first part, is sort of like introduction part to the series. Is I coached for a good while. I don't even know how many years that I was coaching, but I didn't fall out of love coaching the kids. I fell out of love with the parents, because there was, if you try to introduce something new, or if you were doing the research, if you were studying, if you were learning, and you tried to implement that on the team, there was always pockets of parents that didn't want it to be done that way. So then now in this day and age that we're in, I like to throw out, we don't know what we don't know. So until you understand, until you learn that, or you know that, no matter what you hear that's different from your opinion or different from what you know, you're going to deflect it. You're not going to pay attention to it, because it's something out of the norm. Until you're by yourself, until you're in that right mental space where you can go, okay, what was he trying to teach? Or let me look this up. Let me see. And you do your own research and go, wait a minute. Okay, well, I've missed this. Clearly I've missed this. And then you can start to kind of have that conversation with that. But I just got tired of it. It was taking the fun of the game out of it for me. So I got into doing what I do now, where I try to help everybody. Right. And Coach Rico from the Firecrackers, he does this podcast. Well, not a podcast. He does like a Zoom call with his coaches weekly. And then like every month, once a month, he'll meet with all the Firecracker, whoever comes. I mean, it's open to all the players, and they try to get on there and, East Coast, West Coast time change. But he'll tell you, he'll say, look, it's a lot of information. It's like a buffet. Take what you want, take as much as you want, take some of it, take whatever it is, but it's here for you to take. You don't have to take any of it with you. And that's kind of my approach, that I have learned that I can't make anybody believe what I say just by saying it to them. I have to stay above reproach no matter what. That's me as a person, me as a father, me as a husband. No matter what I have going on, if I'm going to put it out there as that's my word, I have to believe in it, and I have to know where it's coming from. And so I got out of that the coaching part so I could become a better coach. And I think more coaches, I appreciate the coaches that still do it, because man, it is a struggle dealing with everything you've got to deal with. There's more stuff to deal with today than 20 years ago, I think, just because of social media. That in itself. Yeah. But then that's an added asset, and it's an added burden to the coaching realm, because you got to make sure that, I mean, everything we do and say is out there.
So let me touch on that mindset of if it's a burden, because I have felt that many times. And I just gave an example where it was a nightmare burden, right? And so I have felt that. And I want to share with you something that shifts my mindset on that drastically, that I think will serve coaches that might be feeling that right now. So I went to it was a coaches clinic. It was put on by USSSA, and one of the national team members were there. Somebody who had played in the Olympics, like somebody who's very famous, who's been part of the game for many, many years. And they were, they're having this conversation like what we are about, like raising parents. I raised my hand, I asked a question. I'm like, what do you think a coach's responsibility is to nurture and grow parents? And she said, don't worry about it. Basically ignore them, focus on your players, because you're not going to change their mind anyway. Right. I look at that even after that conversation, I have a very different perspective on that. I think that as a coach, you actually have more perspective on raising kids, because you work with so many different kids, especially if you've been doing this for a while, because you study it, because you're invested in learning. You're going to have a very different perspective on how to support kids, and ultimately, because of that, support parents. I think parents, they're hungry for information and for guidance on how to best give opportunities to their kids. I believe that as a coach, or as an organization leader, or as a podcaster, part of our responsibility is to also support and help parents and give them perspective, not from a place of, hey, I know better, but from a place of, hey, here's what I'm hearing you say you want for your athlete. Here's some resources I have found. Here's some experiences I've had. Maybe something like this helps you. So like you said with Tony Rico, who calls it the buffet line, I call it the puzzle piece theory. Like when you were born with certain gifts, certain strengths, but also a hand of cards. Like you were dealt this hand in life of where you're from, the experiences you've had. And I believe that as you go throughout life and we make choices, we pick up more puzzle pieces. Mm-hmm. And in order to be a leader, like the job is not to be like, oh, I have the whole picture figured out. Like I know how every practice should be run and every drill and like the whole game plan. It's like, look, here's my puzzle pieces. As a parent, maybe this piece helps you. Like what piece do you have that helps me? Because ultimately the best education is going to come from that dialogue of like, how do we serve this kid the best? And if you get your parents on your team, that's going to be better for the kid. That's going to be better for your team. That's going to be better for your experience as a coach and for their experience as a parent. So often coaches and parents get this adversarial, like, especially from coach's side, adversarial frustration. But as I had a call with some of the girls I was coaching last Sunday, and I was like, well, let's just make it basic math. If you have one piece of frustration and you add it to another piece of frustration plus frustration equals more frustration, right? So like you can't change that any other way. So if you want to change the energy, if you don't want to feel that frustration or that headbutting with parents, like you have to come up with something, you have to come up with a different approach. And like curiosity, understanding, excitement, compassion, like any of those things are going to help create a better environment for the kid and for the team than just being frustrated that they don't get it.
Mm-hmm. I like that. It really brings everything kind of full circle for me in my experience. And I know that's going to help coaches kind of just be aware of it. It's, they're not the only ones feeling that, with that parent pressure. And as a parent, I have 3 daughters at play, different teams, different organizations. So there's a lot of different dynamics going on. And as a parent that was a coaching team, whatever, you got to have some patience. You got to, do your due diligence. Don't just sign don't go have them try out for just anybody, you want to do some research, but also don't listen to all the noise. And then once you get there, kind of have your own experience, because you may love a coach that everybody hates, or you may hate a coach that everybody loves. It just because it's your kid, and you have to have that conversation with your kid. So as we wrap up part 1 here, getting back to having that communication with our students or our players, as a parent, our children, when it comes to trying out or going for something new, how can we kind of read between the lines and get that true feeling? The kid's not telling me what they think I want to hear, but they're telling me their true self. What are some of the things that we can ask and say that may help them bring out the truth that they're feeling?
Okay, so we're going to go really deep on this in the next section, because this is not like a quick answer. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to the very first analogy of, are you on the mountain or are you under the water? I'm going to expand upon that analogy, because the very first thing that we have to do is there's kind of 3 parts. I'll hit the first 2 right now. The first thing is we have to create the space, and what space means, the time and the energy in which an athlete feels comfortable enough that they can even bring that up. Right? That they can that they can have that open dialogue. But the second thing that most people are missing is kids have to actually have the language to communicate it. And so they have to be able to know, how do I say, this is what I want? Because it's exactly the same as how many kids say, I want to play ball in college, right? And they all raise their hand. Why do they want that? It's because that is the definition of success in the sport. Right? The reason they want it isn't because they really want what it means. The reason they want it is because that means that they made it. And that might not be, when they look at the life that's going to provide them, it might not be what they really want. So before we can have an athlete be able to express to us like what they want, or a child, like, here's what I need, here's what I want, they have to be exposed to what does that mean. You have to create some kind of consistent definitions to be able to say, like, hey, here's what this means. Here's the expectation. Here's what I'm looking for. And ultimately that all comes back down to a feeling they want to feel. They want to feel loved. They want to feel seen. They want to feel progress. They want to feel growth. They want to feel excited. They want to feel this emotion. And if they think that the avenue you're providing is going to give them that, of course they're going to go that way. Right.
Right.
If they don't think it's going to give them that, they're going to push away and run away. So I think in the next episode, I'll give you guys I'll share with you one of my favorite analogies that I have found really works with athletes from age 8 all the way up through collegiate, that helps give them a tool to be able to express where they are and what they want.
Great. I'm looking forward to it. Thank you guys for watching part 1. Jen and I will be back. We're going to be tackling the same topic. We're going to go into a little bit deeper conversation on it, help you guys understand yourself, and try to help your children understand the emotions that they have and how they are able to communicate that.
Very excited.
All right, so that's it for part 1. Huge thanks to Jen for coming on, really giving us a lot of stuff to think about. As we dive deeper, as we go further into this series, I really want to challenge you to put yourself in our shoes, put yourself into these situations, and really think about what you would do or what you have done. As we move forward in this series, there's a lot of good stuff we're going to get into. So if you like this stuff, make sure you're sharing it with someone. And when you share it with a friend, make sure you tell them you love them.
It is Ryan here, and I have a question for you. What do you do when you win? Like, are you a fist pumper, a woohooer, a hand clapper, a high fiver? I kind of like the high five, but if you want to hone in on those winning moves, check out Chumba Casino. At ChumbaCasino.com, choose from hundreds of social casino style games for your chance to redeem serious cash prizes. There are new game releases weekly, plus free daily bonuses. So don't wait. Start having the most fun ever at ChumbaCasino.com.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18+.
Lucky Land Casino, asking people, what's the weirdest place you've gotten lucky?
Lucky? In line at the deli, I guess?
Aha, in my dentist's office. More than once, actually.
Do I have to say?
Yes, you do.
In the car before my kids' PTA meeting.
Really?
Yes.
Excuse me, what's the weirdest place you've gotten lucky?
I never win and tell.
Well, there you have it. You can get lucky anywhere, playing at LuckyLandSlots.com. Play for free right now. Are you feeling lucky? No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18+. Terms and conditions apply. See website for details.